Now, moving on, India's External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar on Wednesday briefed the upper house of Parliament on recent developments in India's relations with China. The minister spoke about developments following October's successful disengagement and patrolling agreement along the line of actual control in eastern Ladakh. Dr. Jaishankar noted that India remains committed to engaging with China through bilateral discussions.
The House is aware that our ties have been abnormal since 2020, when peace and tranquility in the border areas were disturbed as a result of Chinese actions. Recent developments that reflect our continuous diplomatic engagement since then have set our ties in the direction of some improvement. India and China have held talks for multiple decades to resolve the boundary issue. While there is a line of actual control, LAC, it does not have a common understanding in some areas. We remain committed to engaging with China through bilateral discussions to arrive at a fair, reasonable, and mutually acceptable framework for boundary settlement.
Made a similar statement in the Lok Sabha, which is the lower house, yesterday as well, India's foreign minister. Now, in Maharashtra, former Chief Minister Devendra Fadnavis has staked claim to form the next government in the state on Wednesday. Devendra Fadnavis, along with leaders of the BJP, the Shiv Sena and the NCP's Mahayuti alliance, submitted a letter of support to Governor C.P. Radhakrishnan on Wednesday. He then invited Chief Minister designate Devendra Fadnavis's BJP-led alliance to form the government. Earlier in the day, BJP's core committee chose Fadnavis as the BJP's legislative party leader. He is expected to take oath on Thursday at a ceremony that will be attended by Prime Minister Narendra Modi and several top BJP leaders and chief ministers. The ceremony will mark the beginning of the new government in Maharashtra following the Mahayuti Alliance's landslide victory in the assembly elections. Tensions between China and the Philippines are running high in the South China Sea. In the latest row, China and the Philippines gave conflicting versions of a maritime confrontation around a contested shoal in the South China Sea. China's Coast Guard said 4 Filipino ships attempted to enter its territorial waters along the Scarborough Shoal, while Philippines' National Maritime Council spokesperson Alexander Lopez condemned the hostile actions of the Chinese Coast Guard against its vessels.
The National Maritime Council condemns the hostile actions against the country's legitimate maritime operations within its maritime zones. The aggressive posture of the Chinese vessels highlights a continuing pattern of aggression, coercion, and intimidation within Philippine waters.
And we're taking you across live right now to Brussels, where NATO members have gathered for a second day of 2-day meetings on Wednesday. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken is holding a news conference at that city.
Before. This may be the best example of burden sharing that I've seen in the 32 years that I've been doing this. And of course, when it comes to our own investment, most of it has been invested in our own defense industrial base to produce weapons that Ukraine needs. But those investments are strengthening our defense industrial base, and they're providing good jobs in the United States. We welcomed the Ukrainian foreign minister here to NATO, along with the EU's new High Representative, Kaja Kallas. And in doing that, we reaffirmed the commitment to Ukraine's defense and to its irreversible path to NATO and EU membership. We continue coordinating to ensure that Ukraine has the money, the munitions, and the mobilized forces to fight as necessary through next year, or to be able to negotiate, but from a position of strength. Ukraine also shows that European security and Indo-Pacific security are intertwined. Over the past 4 years, we've had an unprecedented convergence among allies on the challenges that China poses to transatlantic security, and that includes its critical support for Russia's defense industrial base, which enables Russia's ongoing aggression, and intensifies what is the biggest threat to European security since the end of the Cold War. But this growing convergence here in Europe on the challenges posed both by Russia and in different ways by China, and then growing collaboration between allies and partners in the transatlantic area and the Indo-Pacific, that is a hallmark of the last 4 years. As these threats evolve, as they transcend regions, we've significantly increased engagement beyond NATO, from the Indo-Pacific to the Arctic to NATO's southern flank, reinforcing a 360-degree approach. King Abdullah.
So there you saw Antony Blinken holding a press conference in Brussels. The occasion, of course, the backdrop, of course, being the NATO's foreign ministers meeting, where all the 32 member countries have been meeting in Brussels for the final high-level meeting before Donald Trump takes office next month. So he was also referring to the last 4 years, as well as to what has been the effort to counter threats that come from not only Russia in the context of Ukraine, because that has been the main discussion for NATO, but even in the Indo-Pacific, because China has been a concern as well. And joining us with more is DW correspondent Emily Leshner in Berlin. Good evening from Delhi to you, Emily. Now, what was on the agenda on the whole at this NATO meeting?
Top on the agenda is Ukraine. Yesterday, foreign ministers expressed their unwavering support. This comes more than 1,000 days after Ukraine was invaded by Russia. And they expressed support but did not extend an invitation to join NATO, which Kyiv was reportedly hoping to get at this meeting. This doesn't really come as a surprise because a handful of NATO members are still opposed to letting Ukraine join NATO, including Germany and the US, which is NATO's biggest member. But because of the belief that doing so would be perceived by Moscow as a provocation and spark a much larger war. But Ukraine sees full NATO membership as the only viable deterrent to more Russian aggression. And it also believes that the US and the UK have a responsibility to allow it to join, since 30 years ago, they convinced Ukraine to give up its nuclear weapons to Russia with the assurance that Russia wouldn't use military force against Ukraine. But a U.S. senior official present at the meeting said that the Biden administration would do whatever it could to put Ukraine in the best possible position for potential future negotiations with Russia.
All right. Now, Emily, Donald Trump has said he will pull aid for Ukraine once he takes office and that he will end the war. Now, what's the U.S. doing right now to prepare for the possibility that Trump makes good on his promise?
On Monday, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken announced a package of missiles, ammunition, anti-personnel mines, and other weapons worth around $725 million U.S. dollars. That's nearly 700 million euros for Ukraine. The anti-personnel mines have been pretty controversial because unexploded mines often harm and maim civilians long after wars come to an end. And the 1997 Ottawa Treaty bans their use, but neither the U.S. nor Russia are parties to this treaty. Right after the war between Russia and Ukraine began, Kyiv started requesting them from the U.S. The Biden administration, again, is trying to do everything it can to support Ukraine before Trump takes office again, except for allowing it to join NATO as a member.
And Emily, German Chancellor Olaf Scholz was just in Ukraine as well. So what came out of that particular visit, which was of relevance here?
The same day Antony Blinken announced a new aid package for Ukraine, Scholz did touch down in Kyiv for a meeting with President Zelensky. It was a signal to both Ukraine and to Russia that Germany continues to stand with Ukraine, no matter what Trump tries to do in his second term. Scholz promised that Germany would deliver arms worth around 650 million euros by the end of the year, including air defense systems, drones, and Leopard tanks. But the arms package does not include Taurus missiles, which Zelensky has repeatedly asked Germany to provide. Taurus missiles can find targets more than 500 kilometers away, and they're hard to detect by radar because of the altitude that they fly at. So they would give Ukraine a significant military boost, but Germany has been very reluctant to hand them over because it could spell an escalation of the war. But despite this disagreement, Zelensky expressed his gratitude to Germany for its support and for being the top European donor to Ukraine. To date, Germany has provided a total of more than 37 billion euro in support for Ukraine. And while Scholz was in Kyiv, he also paid tribute to Ukrainian soldiers who died in combat and met with wounded soldiers at a hospital.
Emily Leshner, thank you for joining us from Berlin. Now, India's public broadcaster Prasar Bharati has recently launched Waves, entering the field of OTT platforms. Waves provides a complete infotainment ecosystem to digital media and OTT audiences. If you also want to get great content for free, then download Waves today. And that's all for this edition of DD India Live, but let us know your thoughts on the news of the day as well. And for those on the go, you can get all the latest news and updates from India and across the world on DD India's mobile app. It's available on both Android and iOS. You can scan the QR code on the screen and download the app right now. And we'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Gautam Roy. From all of us here in Delhi, thanks for watching DD India Live.